Oh boy, Wowie. Hey Joshua, do you remember E3 2021 at Square Enix's conference?
I do.
When they revealed Eidos Montreal's Square Enix's Guardians of the Galaxy, and everybody was pissed off because it wasn't Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that?
Remember how Final Fantasy 16 still hasn't been shown since?
Hey, don't worry about it. Hey, listen,
I think we'll survive.
You know what I've seen since then?
What?
I've seen the entirety of Marvel's Square Enix's Eidos Montreal's Guardians of the Galaxy, and I can and having played it, I can say with great confidence that it is not Final Fantasy 16.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think it was stealthily Final Fantasy 16 in disguise, as a lot of people were expecting. I know that there were a lot of bets being placed in certain sports books about whether it was going to be that or not.
I can also say with confidence, it's a pretty good video game.
I liked it. It was nice. It was a good time.
You and I played it together.
Yeah.
Recently over the course of, I don't know, it probably took us like a week or two to actually get through the whole thing.
It was. We kind of powered through like the front, like 2/3 of it, and then the back third took a bit longer. I think we had both kind of lost a bit of steam on it just because it was. I wouldn't say it's long. It's not necessarily that long. It's around 20 hours, but it was just like the first. We got through about 14 hours of it, and then started slowing down a bit just on our playthrough itself.
Looks like we started on a day, and then how many days later did it take us to finish it?
10 days. 10 days.
Okay, but we were playing. We weren't necessarily playing every single day, and we were playing mostly in like hour chunks.
Yeah,
we really didn't do super lengthy, but it was.
How long was it? I'll look at how long to beat real quick.
I don't know how long it took.
I think it was like 18 hours.
We were not counting, and we didn't film it because I'm tired of filming things.
Yeah, me too. It was nice to not do that and just
play a video game.
I was almost right on. Main plus extras is 19 and a half, and main is 17. So I feel confident in saying for us it was around 18 hours. Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, we played all the way through, and that's not that difficult because it is a real, honest to God single player video game with a story that starts and then ends, and there's no
giant sequel tease.
There's no sequel tease.
There's
no
like wait for DLC.
There's no wait for the DLC to see what happens next. Even though there's that one hilarious moment where Drax does his best impersonation of Gladiolus from Final 15, and Final Fantasy 15 says, "Hey, I have to go do something."
That was my favorite part of the game.
He's only gone for like 2 minutes.
We got a good kick out of that because we really thought it was going to be a DLC quest.
I didn't think it was going to be a DLC
but
quest.
It just had that energy.
It was just very funny. You find him 2 minutes later and talk to him. It's fine. It was just it was written almost the exact same way.
It was like the same kind of. It was the same shot. Even it was like the same angle.
Funny. Anyway. But yeah, we're going to talk about it a little bit because we thought it was a pretty fun video game, and everybody was really, really hard on it. To be completely fair, like some of the early trailers weren't fantastic, but I understand why this was hard to market because it's extremely difficult to talk about this game without talking about spoilers.
Yeah.
Like there's stuff that I would consider like, I guess, spoiler material within the first hour and a half.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And in some ways, you can make an argument that the main antagonists don't really show up until like a third of the way through the game.
It's probably even further. I don't remember the exact
you don't know what the hell's going on with them for a little while.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you see the main antagonists pretty early on, but you really don't know their scheme until almost the halfway point of the game.
Yeah, and it
doesn't start taking effect until almost the back third.
I would say it's a little bit faster than that. I think it seemed a little bit like it was more backloaded than it was, just because once it starts going, it's pretty intense, and it moves pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. It wasn't. I wouldn't say it was like it takes that long to get into it. It takes a little bit longer than you might expect. You're not fighting the main antagonists right away, but it's not a lot of dead time. Like stuff that I thought was side questy, wasting time nonsense.
It turned into not being side questy, wasting time nonsense. There was one thing near the end where it felt like they had to pad the game out a bit, and we'll get to that in a while, I'm guessing.
Yeah, sure.
There was one chapter that felt a bit like padding, but I mean, it was fine. I didn't dislike it. It really changed up the aesthetics of what the game had been going for and felt a lot different than most of the other environments. And at that point, I was getting really tired of seeing the hull of a spaceship. Yeah. So it was nice to have that change of scenery.
And it felt like a nice little pace breaker because the game had been kind of going full.
It had been go for like almost half the game. So you kind
of got to chill and do a little side adventure. Yeah, it was wacky and fun.
I see why they did it,
and it was still plot crucial. I guess we'll try and talk about the plot of this game a little bit. I don't think we're going to have much to say about the gameplay. The gameplay I mean, the gameplay's not bad, but it's pretty weak.
It's very stereotypical action adventure game. You know,
it's even like, I mean, honestly, like it's kind of, because you have a very harsh auto lock on, and it's not the mistake that I saw journalists make when they were playing, Uncharted 4, and they left the accessibility stuff on.
It felt like Metroid Prime lock on, like on GameCube.
I think
felt
it's
very much like there are going to be people playing this who don't know how to play shooters. It kind of felt like that.
I more read it as Peter Quill's guns. You play as Peter Quill.
Yeah.
His guns are
Spoilers.
not important.
Not at all.
You're doing damage with team moves and finishing moves.
Yeah, your guns are really just, so over the course of the game you unlock basically different types of bullets, right, as the game goes on.
You can exploit elemental weaknesses in ways that your other teammates can't, and that becomes an important part of normal minute-to-minute play. But other than that, your guns are primarily good for killing grunts and for doing supplemental chip damage.
Yeah, it's
on top of
basically
team attacks.
it's basically the only thing you can really do with your guns is kill lower rank baddies. I say rank. There aren't any ranks in the game for certain enemies, but like it's
just kill grunts.
Yeah, build stagger with certain ones, do slightly more damage against the bigger guys. It's literally just, okay, what am I doing while all of these abilities are cooling down so I can use them again? It's okay, what kind of chip damage do I want to be doing? Do I want to build stagger? Do I want to just do a bit more damage? Do I want to, knock them back or freeze them in place? It's just stuff like that. It's pretty simple.
Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. The game is honestly, I mean, it's not exactly a challenging platformer, but you spend a lot of time exploring levels, especially if you're trying to find all the collectibles, all the costumes and stuff, which was fun. And you're primarily learning how to use your team's various abilities that you unlock throughout the game and how to combine them together to maximize damage output. And one thing that I did like about it is that once you get into a very good rhythm, you get to the point where you've got enemies that with your normal, I'm just going to fight and not like just shoot at them, you're doing very little damage. But once you learn how to use all the tools in your toolkit, you can just melt their health bars in seconds.
For sure. At the beginning of the game, because I played about the first like 2 or 3 hours, and then for the most part after that, you took over. And in the first couple hours, it was like it wasn't a revelation, but it went from very much, okay, how the hell am I supposed to bend this system to work properly? And within a few hours, it was, okay, I do this, combo into this. Okay, and it's not that complicated. Even if that sounds complicated to someone, it's not complicated as much as it is just it's a slight learning curve that I feel like most players will probably get within the first 3 hours.
Yeah, and because it's really, once you figure out, initially early on, it's like use Groot, because every one of your teammates starts out with only one ability initially, and at the beginning it's very simple. It's like use Groot for crowd control, then follow up with Rocket to do crowd control damage.
Yeah.
Use Drax to stagger big enemy. Use Gamora to do damage to big enemy. But as you unlock more abilities, what they can do gets more diverse, and who they can attack gets more diverse. And so you get a little bit of creative decision making.
Usually by the end, every character had something for big guys and something for small guys, and then something in between or some support ability. And by the end, at the very least, but yeah, for most of the playthrough, it was mostly just they had their roles. I feel like because we kind of, I mean, it's just the way we spec'd it because you can put your ability points into whatever. But we kind of spec'd it to keep everyone in their roles like even stronger at the beginning, and then like it was only near the end.
Then we got the supplemental stuff later on to let them kind of diversify what they were doing. But later on, they start throwing so many big enemies at you and small enemies at you at the same time that you kind of have to diversify what you're doing in order to attack efficiently. But it's fine. And of course, most of their abilities function on cooldowns, but your main like booster, upgrade what everybody's doing ability is basically give them all no cooldowns.
Exactly.
So you can get pretty go weird and wild with what you're doing with them later.
Yeah.
But there's not really much to say about the gameplay. It's fun, it's serviceable, but the game is primarily about moving along on its story.
Yeah. It's very narrative driven, like more so than I would say the last few. I mean, I'd say to give it a parallel to other Square stuff, like the combat system's nowhere near as good as FF7R.
Yeah, but I guess we should really, honestly, to do even more of to do an Edigas Montreal specific, the combat, I don't think it's anywhere near as good as their 2 Deus Ex games.
Yeah,
but that's not because it's not really about that. Because the Deus Ex games are about speccing one player character to do whatever the heck you want. This is really not about that.
Well, Deus Ex is at least a bit more of an RPG in the way you spec your character. I would say you're very much you're speccing into a class. You're speccing into a class, whereas in this game it's really just you're you're not even really diversifying your movesets that much for for your party members. You're just kind of making them a bit stronger as the game goes on.
I will say, because speaking of RPG stuff, one thing that's worth noting, because I was joking around with you and Joey beforehand, it's like, do you like Mass Effect, but do you wish Mass Effect was good? And there's a lot of Mass Effect to this in like, because the game is divided up into chapters, which are generally like one level, which is a large area.
Around an hour long each, usually.
Yeah, sometimes it'll be like a kind of a town area. We're going to walk around and do more role-playing type stuff, but that only happens like once or twice in the game. Usually it
was really only one time.
I feel like there were a couple. Maybe it doesn't matter.
It was only the one town level, I'm pretty sure anyway. Maybe I'm wrong.
Mostly you're in a linear level where you walk forward, find things, occasionally solve light puzzles, fight bad guys. I will say the puzzles never became super duper obnoxious. I think the longest one there ever was just a bit where you're infiltrating a bad guy spaceship kind of early on when the plot's moving, and you have to reroute power for that big kind of array in that elevator.
Yeah, that was a bit odd.
I was just gonna say, like, that was, I think, the longest the game ever asked you to spend on a puzzle, and it felt fine.
And they also kind of diversified the gameplay there. It wasn't just entirely puzzle. In that part, you were also fighting stuff. Like, it's interspersed in that section. Yeah. So it didn't feel obnoxious by any means.
But anyway, what I was going to say is, between individual chapters, you're back on your ship, you talk with your party members, all the collectibles in the game, other than costumes, are specific items that will trigger new conversations with the characters. Yeah. You don't really have like loyalty quests that unlock special side objectives, but you learn a lot about this versions of the characters' backstories, because they're not really doing it's I think, from my knowledge of the comics, which is limited, it's obviously skewing way closer to the movies than it is to the comics, but there's elements of the comics kind of stuck in there, and there's some weirdo stuff going on. One thing that's great is there's a throwaway comment like an hour and a half into the game that's like, Thanos is dead.
And it's like, wait, what? If you don't go into it knowing that, like, that was one of the things that was in the trailers.
I don't mind saying that as I mean, talking about that, because I don't consider that a spoiler, because it's unimportant to the story. It's just one thing that's like, hey, there's a very similar thing in Loki, where when Loki's hanging out in the Time Police headquarters, where he sees Infinity Stones, and he's like, "Ooh, Infinity Stones!" and a guy opens up the drawer on his desk, and he has duplicates of several of them, and he uses them as paperweights because they're time cops, so it doesn't matter. And it feels very similar, like even though obviously the video games haven't dealt with Thanos, it's like, we're all done with this character.
It was such a really good way of just telling everyone, okay, we're divorcing this from the movies.
This is different.
This is irreparably different from what those were doing, and we are telling our own story, more so than just slightly different character designs and a slightly different premise.
It gives Gamora and Drax especially, it puts them in a very different place than they are in the James Gunn movies.
Oh, 100%. And so Rocket and Groot are still about the same. Well, Groot, I mean, you can't really change Groot. But yeah, Rocket's kind of a similar character. He feels very much just the movie character. To a certain extent, there's a couple of things they throw in there, but
he's the closest to his movie counterpart.
Yeah, but Gamora and Drax, I would say, are probably heavily improved from the movies. I like the movies well enough, but I feel like there's a lot more going on with those characters than there are in the movie, especially with Drax.
Well, you say that we got like 7 movies worth of runtime here, but
I mean, obviously it's cheating, but I don't know. These characters were a lot more interesting to me by like the 3-hour mark than.
Sure. There's more stuff being done with them here, because there's not as much time to spend on the characters necessarily in the films. But no, they're handled really well, and in terms of the role playing stuff and the narrative stuff, though it is a single experience, and I'm not sure that these changes are really enough to draw someone back to replay the game. There are not really branching paths, because the narrative progression is linear, but there are a bunch of decisions and conversations you can make along the way that do impact how the story progresses.
There will be some where it's like, instead of having a fight, you'll have just a cinematic cutscene where someone you helped along the way will help you out in a battle. You won't have to fight it.
During the final sequence of the game especially, there's
a lot of those.
There have been a number of points throughout the game where you've had conversations with characters kind of about the larger situation of the plot, and convincing them to help or not help. And in our playthrough, I'm pretty sure we
I think
convinced everybody.
Yeah, we perfected it.
Because I was reading a guide for item locations because I didn't really care to I didn't think I was really gonna need to replay the game.
And
again,
it was like after this fight.
But I wanted to see all the costumes. Yeah, the description, the guide was like, after you do this fight, you'll be able to find the item around here. And that fight didn't happen for us because a character we helped out earlier showed up and literally blew up like 2 rooms worth of fights.
Enemies, yeah.
And that happens, and I feel like that's really the momentum the ending of the game is supposed to have, because by that point it's like, well, I'm done.
It's like you understand the combat. It's pretty simple. Let's move on.
Let's move on. Let's get past this.
I think that to a certain extent, like I don't know how much they could have changed things really with how the game was set up. I don't know how much could have been different, right? But at the same time, I know stuff did change, and I know that other people are going to have a different experience, at least to a certain extent. Yeah,
I wonder, because having played Human Revolution and watched a good bit of Mankind Divided, I think that I mean, I don't know if these are the same writers or not, but I really liked a lot of like the kind of debates that you have with characters in those games. Some of my favorite and most memorable bits of Human Revolution were where you have to have essentially philosophical debates with another character about their outlook on something, and you essentially have to do that a couple of times.
Isn't that immoral?
You do that a number of times in this game, and I found it was not quite as in depth as what you're doing
as a Neil Breen film.
Huh?
As a Neil Breen film?
As a Neil Breen film, yeah. But it worked pretty well, because if nothing else, I usually felt like I was being rewarded for trying to get into the headspace of the other character.
I'd say so.
They weren't like, I don't know how complicated these things are, obviously, because I didn't play these dialogue trees multiple times and find out if you like, what do you have to do to fail?
Yeah,
what's the threshold for winning?
I don't even know if you could have failed a lot of them. I think maybe there could have been.
Well, you have to be, because there are those segments where those characters don't show up and help later on, right?
I mean, yeah, but I'm saying like the ones with your party members and the ones integral to the plot. I'm not sure how those would be different if you screwed them up.
But my point is, like, in the bits where I now can say with some degree of confidence, like, you were actually you were debating a character who could be convinced or not convinced. It's hard for me to say, like, how easy or difficult those debates are, since we just won them.
Yeah.
But I will say it was never like here's the obvious right answer and the wrong answer. It usually felt like 2 logical responses to what was going on, and you just kind of had to try and get inside the other person's headspace.
Exactly.
And I found that effective. So in general, not just like the writing of the dialogue, but the game experience writing of you being able to role play as a character and go through these dialogue tree conversations, I found pretty. Yeah, I found pretty fun.
It was engaging. Like I said. Like you already said, it's like we don't know how much that if we had failed them, like what would have changed, but it certainly was. It was fun in the moment of like, okay, don't pick this option because this, and this I don't think would have a positive effect on the character, and being right about a decision like that.
Yeah, this it's definitely not a Telltale Quantic Dream. Go back and replay to see like the different branching paths. I think you're probably gonna play this game once, then maybe go back to it maybe a couple years later or something.
That's kind of my vibe.
It is not. I don't see this being like I'll turn around, go right back into New Game Plus type experience. It's just not. It's not.
It's not built for that.
But anyway, to briefly explain the plot without getting into spoilers, the Guardians of the Galaxy
save the universe.
They have to guard the galaxy from bad guys. What
a story.
It's like they're skirting the line of origin story and non-origin story, because it seems like the characters have been working together for a while. Yeah. In this canon.
It seems like they talk about how they've done like 10 jobs or 11 jobs, which makes me think it's been about a year.
I want to say in interviews they said a year or 2 or something.
That's kind of the vibe I got.
They kind of cheat, because they're kind of doing an origin story without actually having to have us get all the characters together. Mm-hmm. But it feels all right because the characters already have established rapport. They already kind of know each other. They all have a way of talking to each other already, and it's specifically established.
Not to say it doesn't evolve during the story, because there definitely is. They are, like you said, kind of doing an origin story at the same time, and a lot of the character dynamics really do change.
It means that we don't spend too much time treading familiar ground. And specifically with Rocket and Groot and Peter Quill, it's stated that they've been together for like a longer amount of time.
I don't remember that. But
they mentioned that several times early on in the game that they've been working together, and that Gamora and Drax are relatively recent additions.
And then I want to say Drax is slightly older. I remember it being that Drax was commenting on Peter adding Gamora to the crew.
Okay.
So it was. I guess there is a clear order to it now. I'm thinking about it.
But anyway, it really is hard to talk about the story without going into spoiler detail, but I guess to be very brief, number one, we liked it. It was good.
Yeah.
I think we both agree it could have been a little bit shorter.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie, when we got to the final dungeon, the final dungeon is pretty long.
It's a good final dungeon.
It's a good final dungeon, but like I had just completely lost interest, not with the entire plot, but like I was burnt out with it. I feel like because the gameplay, even just from a watching it perspective, it was like the gameplay had just gotten really monotonous. There's
not super interesting.
There is one sequence I'm thinking of in particular, the one with the floating platforms about around the halfway point. I think you know the one I'm talking about.
I think so. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that section. Well, our game we have a base PS4, and our game was flipping the freak out during that.
That said, we died one time during that sequence. It was right at the end, so we didn't get to properly test it. But after we died, the frame rate restored itself. So
I think it was just it got overclocked at one point and then never recovered.
It's possible.
But
we'll have to maybe I'll replay that one segment sometime just to see if I can get it to run at a better frame rate. But we saved some footage of that, which perhaps I'll put on screen in the edit of this because the frame rate was absolutely. It was
horrible, and it was already a pretty bad sequence because it was basically just 5 combat gauntlets in a row, and there was very little that changed between them.
And it was all running at 5 frames per second.
I just remember at that point I wasn't done with the game, obviously, but I was very much like the next couple times me and Jacob sat down to play it, I was not giving the game my full attention, like unless it was a story beat.
Yeah,
and I think that kind of remained for most of the playthrough with me, just because at that point I was like, yeah, this gameplay's rote.
There was also, I feel like, there's the joke, it goes, hey, if you are designing a boss and you're like, what should the boss do now? He should deploy a bunch of smaller minions during this phase.
That means you've messed up.
So that happens not too much because usually when you're fighting an actual boss with a big boss health bar, you're usually just fighting them.
Yeah.
However, technically, the very final boss of the game isn't even a boss. It's just a minion fight with a boss standing menacingly in the background. And that fight sucked.
It really
the game
bad.
That was at that point I was
like I really thought I was like, so we're fighting the boss now, right? We're fighting the big bad, and then it was like, oh. That
really felt like
felt tacked on. Felt tacked on.
The game is really good, and I like the story and I like the ending, but there's like at the very, very end, there's like a 5-minute ganked. You thought it was over, but no one thought it was over. No one believed it. No one thought it was over.
It reminds me of I'll try to not use proper nouns here, but it reminds me of Metal Gear Solid 3, the ending of that game, where they do a very obvious it's over, and then there's another final boss, and then like another 40 minutes of denouement.
But that part is, number one, a joke, and number two, awesome.
Yes. No. And
that bonus part in Metal Gear Solid 3 contains literally one of my favorite fight cutscenes in all of video games.
Yes. Yes.
It's like the best cutscene in all of video gamedom.
I don't know what you're talking about. The scene with the motorcycle kung fu at the beginning of the game is also pretty good.
That's pretty good. What we're saying is that Metal Gear Solid 3 is a really good video.
It's a really good game. Go play it.
But it very much felt that they were left with this plot point that was slightly too big for the scope of what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
And they wrapped up like 90% of the plot, and they're like, oh wait, there was this huge dangling thread that's like really kind of impossible for these characters
to deal with.
We'll throw in a little novelty fight to wrap up the plot, and that was the only.
It's just fighting a bunch of minions. I just remember I was like, you were fighting it, and after about 3 minutes I was like, oh, this is the entire fight, because there wasn't a big health bar over the bad guy.
Yeah.
I was just on my phone because I was like, it'll be over soon.
That is, and I don't mind really mentioning that in spoilers, because I consider that literally the low point of the entire game, and it's like basically after the story's over. There's just one kind of wrap up beat that's not that great. Other than that, like you said, there's one bit towards the end where there's an hour and a half break from the plot where the characters run off and do a side quest, which, depending on your taste, will either be a pace breaking like mood killer
Yeah.
or one of your favorite parts of the game, I think.
I really liked it.
Yeah.
I acknowledge that I think to a lot of people it's not going to be great because I could see, I was like, this really feels like padding, but I'm into it.
You and I were, I think, were not only
I was just laughing my
not
ass
only
off
not
during
only
it.
were quoting that segment for days. I think you and I will continue to make jokes about that segment for a very long time, but we'll get into it.
It involves
later.
Drax saying the name of a character over and over again in a very funny way.
And it's I don't know if it's from the, I haven't looked it up. I don't know if it's from the comics or not. Whatever, who cares?
Look
It's
it
the
up right
best.
now. I might as well look up the name of this
Nah,
character.
who cares? I'd really rather not know anything about the comics because the only other problem I have with the ending of the game is there's one bit where there's like the plot is happening and you're into it, and there's one specific thing that happens with one character, and I found out that character was like a pre-existing comic book character, and I told you beforehand. And I think if you didn't know anything about that pre-existing,
it would come out of nowhere.
That pre-existing obscure comic book character, and you thought they were just a character from this game, and then that thing happens with that character, you'd be like, huh? What? Because it doesn't fit. And even with like knowledge of the comics, and you go, oh,
why does this character have a weird comic booky design now?
They're doing that thing with the character because they're from the comic book, but in universe, it doesn't feel justified at all.
No, it literally feels like, oh, this character went through some emotional stuff, and therefore they get a cool costume change.
It felt kind of hacky. And this game mostly does not feel very hacky.
And that was kind of the thing for me was I think the ending was insanely satisfying, honestly. But it just has a few hiccups in it that undercut what was, I think, a really satisfying narrative.
You know what's also worth mentioning? Because you and I were just complaining earlier about how, I like the writing of the Marvel movies for the most part, but I can also freely acknowledge that the
Joss
style,
Whedon quippiness of everything.
The Whedon style has ruined all writing for everyone else forever.
Correct.
Like, it works in those movies, but now it's infected everything.
Yeah, except Aaron Sorkin films for the most part.
It's actually kind of light in this. Like when you're doing like the collectible conversations when you're on the Normandy.
Those are insanely.
When you're on the Normandy,
those are usually pretty grim.
When you're on the Normandy and talking with your crew about the collectible items, it's basically always a character trauma dumping on Peter Quill and Peter going, "Whoa, wow, that sounds like that sucks." And there's not really jokes in it unless it's a character literally trying to like
lighten it up,
a little bit, and it's always like a half-hearted joke that it's clear no one really believes in. They're just trying to like make themselves feel slightly better.
Yeah.
It felt appropriate, and like once you get into the really dire situations, the jokes stop for the most part. It's, I don't know.
The ending of the game is played almost completely straight. There is one character in there who's kind of added to the group very late. There are two characters really that are added to the group semi-late that are kind of.
You mean the llama, right?
Yes.
The llama's the
no.
the llama's at the beginning of the
third. That's the third character that's added.
There is one character.
Two, really.
There's one character who is mostly played straight, and very occasionally the characters go, "Hey, get a load of this guy," because he's a silly comic book dude. But to be fair, it takes like 2 hours of that character being on screen for the characters to go get a load of this wacky guy, and it's because by that point you're also going get a load of this wacky guy.
Yeah, it's because if they kept playing it straight at that point, people would just
you would
be
start
laughing.
You would start to go, these characters would not be giving this guy a break at this point. But anyway, I mean, really, it's very.
And then like one character who is just played as the joke and is there to be the comic relief once things get really serious.
The only thing that I can really say about the story without getting into spoilers is the Guardians have to learn to work together as a team,
and then they have to be the Guardians of the Galaxy
to stop a really big threat. I guess the one thing I'll say is that the threat is so large that like. It is such a massive scale threat without being like an Infinity War repeat.
Spoiler warning here. You can bleep this out, Jacob.
Spoilers in a second.
No. But basically, the entire galaxy is plugged into a motherboard and used to mine Bitcoin.
We'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that in just a second.
You can bleep that out. I just wanted to say it.
But no, it's the Guardians have to team up and fight a big bad guy. But there is a lot of character work going on, in particular for Peter, for Drax, and a little bit for Rocket, I guess. It kind of feels like Gamora is going to get character stuff in a hypothetical sequel or DLC.
Yeah, she was definitely kind of, in terms of the amount of backstory we got for her, it really, like, the last one was the first one where you got a lot. I think you know the one I'm talking about.
If you collect all of her little collectibles, you get a really good sense of what's going on with her in this universe by the end of the game, but it kind of feels like she went through a lot of crap right before the game started, hasn't quite finished processing it yet, and doesn't have time to process it during this game.
I think they say at one point that, like, oh, it was about 6 months ago when she joined, and from the way things sound, it's like, oh, her baggage was going on until 6 months ago.
Yeah, it was right up before that started. So it
feels like it's probably the sequel hook is dealing with a lot of her stuff.
This game spends a lot of time among the members of the group getting inside of Peter's head and getting inside of Drax's head, and no pun intended.
Yeah.
And a little bit of Rocket. And it really feels like Gamora is probably going to be an important character in a sequel, not because there's sequel setup hook stuff, but because it feels like they've laid a lot of seeds with her that they did not actually explore thoroughly.
Yeah. Drax was pretty thoroughly explored. His headspace was really explored in this game,
and they're probably and it to the point where you're like, this character is probably just going to be now static at this point.
Yeah, I mean, because they kind of go through the stuff that happened with him in the movies, like pretty one to one, but then they add a bunch of stuff on top of that, and they go through all that in this game. He probably gets the most characterization of any of the main characters, I would say, besides Peter himself. Because that's one thing that's really good about this game is you get a better sense for Peter in this than you do in any of the movies, I would say. I mean, I guess Guardians too, but
look, what can I say? I like those Guardians movies, especially too. But whatever.
I'm kind of in the opposite, where I'm more a fan of the first one. But different strokes for the different folks, and I understand that the actual villain plot in the first Guardians movie is pretty rote and by the numbers.
Yeah,
I just really like the style of that
man
movie.
in black cloak wants blow up planet for revenge, I guess. I don't know.
And he sounds like this.
Does he sound like that?
I have no idea. I'm gonna guess he does.
I don't remember that guy.
He's a member of the Blue Man Group.
Remember every part of that movie except for that guy. The villains in the Marvel movies, it's like Killmonger's kind of interesting. To be fair, all the villains in the Spider-Man movies so far have been good.
Yeah.
Mysterio was good. Vulture was good. As much as people make fun of it, I still like Jeff Bridges in the original Iron Man.
I think people just make fun of it because he was the beginning of the formula. And I honestly think in that movie, yes, his characterization goes out the window once he's in big robot suit. Once he wants to crush people in rebellion. But during the actual events of the story, it's like you understand where he's coming from. And like, yes, he's the villain, but it's very clear his motivations, and it works.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that one.
And I like Redford in Winter Soldier.
Yeah. He's great.
Really freaking. I mean, I guess Hela is the villain of Thor Ragnarok, but she's barely in it. I consider Goldblum.
Jeff Goldblum is the main villain of the movie. Yes. Take to the skies. Don't
let them leave this planet. And then, of course, you and I are the only people on the planet who love the villain from the original Ant-Man.
Oh, he's great.
I
turn guys into goo for fun.
It goes past the boring evil villain and encroaches
it's
upon
like they know
parody territory.
That really,
I
don't think it was meant to be that way.
I don't think it was self-aware at all. But
it was great.
It's so funny when like a guy says something. When a guy says something vague, like that, his first scene is a guy says something vaguely condescending to him, and
he turns him to goo.
He turns him to goo with a laser gun
in the bathroom, and then flicks him down a drain.
It's like, who is this guy?
And it's like, it's clear he's the villain in that scene, but you're not expecting them to go full tilt with it so fast, so it makes it even funnier.
Anyway, breaking into actual spoilers at this point, because it's difficult to talk about this game otherwise. To be very clear, at this point, we are going to be spoiling the whole game full tilt. We will go very gentle at the beginning to maybe convince you.
I didn't get the memo on that part. That's why he's bleeped out that other stuff.
Don't worry about it. I'm going to cut around that part. We're going to go gentle on the spoilers at the very beginning. In case you haven't played it, maybe we can convince you to check it out. We'll start, but like start tapping out as soon as you're like, okay, I'm interested. If you haven't played it, because we're just gonna go through the whole thing. When I was watching playthrough stuff of this game, when I was like, this game's got an angle, it's interesting to me. Number one, Thanos was dead.
Yeah.
Number two, Peter has a kid. Joshua, explain what happens in Chapter 2 of this game.
So in Chapter 2 of this game, after a routine job where you go into an asteroid field looking for loot, and then it's like restricted airspace, and then the authorities come in and arrest you. You get to this space station, right? And you're being arrested, and this freaking twerp starts like being involved in arresting you and asking you a bunch of questions, and you're like, what's with this twerp?
There's this you get pulled over by the cops, and this like 12-year-old cadet shows up and is involved in the arrest. You're like, that's a weird character to show up. Oh yeah, I guess we should mention first, before even that, the commanding officer of this cop vessel shows up on the video screen, and it is clear almost immediately that she and Peter have history.
Yeah, and then so she shows up, and then things start, the twerp and her start interacting, and it's very clear that it's some sort of close relationship.
Because that's not even true. Like, literally, she name drops that the commanding officer of the vessel is her mom early on accident.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
And then it's nice because the game doesn't treat you like an idiot.
It lets you put the pieces together very quickly.
In your dialogue choices, one of them is press about the arrest, and the other one is, wait a second, did you say mom? And Peter doesn't freak out. Peter doesn't go, oh my god, this is my kid. You have the option to literally not even bring it up with Corell, who is Nikki's mom.
Which is basically what that's what we did.
Because I think what's the point? Everybody is capable. Of doing the math in the room.
And eventually you get to the point where it's like, oh, the last time they saw each other was 12 years ago. The kid's 12 years old, so it's very easy to do the math without picking the do the math option.
There's literally a dialogue prompt when you were alone in Corell's office. This woman who Peter was close friends with 12 years ago, after Nikki, the daughter, has been dismissed, and a dialogue prompt shows up, and it's not even timed. You have as much time to think about it as you want, which is do the math or don't do the math.
It's ignore the math.
Ignore the math.
Yeah.
You can basically just just bring it up and start interrogating her, or you can drop it and move on, which is, I figure, also with the way that he's written in scenes where you don't have control over his dialogue, I don't think he'd bring it up with her.
It's kind of weird, because I think in the context of that game, he seems a lot less scummy than Star-Lord does at the beginning of the movies, if you know what I mean. But at the same time, he's kind of written in that same like early Guardians 1 Star-Lord way. I'd say that's one thing I kind of don't like about it, is it's like, oh, Peter he's literally flirting with everyone and blah blah blah, but I don't know, I feel like he's much more like that in the Guardians movies at the beginning, and he doesn't really feel like that's his character at the beginning of this game, but maybe that's just me reading too much into it.
I think it's more that Corell is an old flame that he knew some time ago.
Yeah.
And they clearly still have at least slight feelings. They both like each other.
Yeah.
She's held onto a little keepsake of his at this point for 30 years.
Yeah.
For 12 years. She literally has a little Chewbacca action figure that he had on him when he was abducted that she's kept on her desk.
Yeah. And then I'd say, before we move on from that, also, before you get to the point where you can do the math or ignore the math, you run around. There's hijinks happen where you have to
run around with Nikki, which is where you get to know her a little bit.
Yeah, and it's like, her and Peter are pretty similar. You and I are not so different, kid, if you will.
Well, I guess you can. Well, we didn't choose to badger her. You can choose to more empathize with her and stuff, which is what we did, which I'm sure is the point.
Also, you're a prisoner in that context, so we thought it made a lot more sense to kind of sweeten up with the people who are you're incarcerating officers, even though she's just she's a cadet. She is basically the one who books you. So
yeah. So you that's another scene early on where you have a lot of kind of sway over how that scene plays out, because you can kind of be resistant a little bit and try to take control of the situation or empathize with her a little bit more.
Yeah.
And it's a good lengthy scene where you kind of do. I guess I don't know. Some people really resent the cinematic prestige tour walk and talks with characters. I don't care.
Yeah.
I don't
also
mind.
it's like I don't see how combat would have even worked in that section.
It doesn't matter.
And it's like they needed to get that exposition out, because it's actually pretty important later on that
and not
they
just
had
exposition, characterization for her, because the next time we see, because we're not going to see Nikki for a while, and she's kind of one of the most important characters in the entire game. So we need to get
outside
really
of the Guardians and like main villains, she's probably the most important character in the game.
Yeah, I'd say she's more important than the main villains. But because I mean, this game has a pretty big supporting cast, but for the most part, they're kind of like
they are supporting cast. They're very much ensemble.
Yeah, they're important to the plot, but not pulling a lot of like character meaty weight to them.
Yeah,
like Cosmo's in this and he's fun. Lady Hellbender is fun, but these are not characters you care about on a deep emotional level.
I don't know. I cared about Cosmo. He was my favorite character.
Anyway, and a bunch of shenanigans happen at this point. The Guardians have to pay off a fine to the cops. Which leads to
because they were smuggling a llama in government airspace.
They were smuggling a llama in government airspace.
I'm kidding. We didn't pick the llama. Don't sue us, PETA.
Oh yeah, we don't even know if like I have to. I don't know if that. I guess the llama can get confiscated and just not be there for the rest of the game, which feels so weird.
Yeah.
When you play the game, you will be given two options: to hide a bunch of technology contraband, or to hide a llama when you're searched by the cops.
Because you know you're going to get fined for one of them,
and you only have enough space to hide one of the two.
Which one are you going to get fined more for? And it's the obvious choice is you hide the contraband and the weapons. But obviously,
I don't even know what happens if you keep the contraband, weapon, technology, and stuff. Hide that damn llama.
Yeah.
Hide that llama, dude.
It costs you less money if you hide the llama. So hide the llama. And you also get funny scenes.
You get funny scenes with the llama.
I don't know.
The llama literally saves your life later on.
Yeah, so I have to feel like I have to feel like it's required, right?
No, because I looked up that cannot happen. So you must just escape during that sequence in some other way.
Huh.
Maybe you escape using the technology in that sequence, and it really doesn't matter.
Maybe it's in your room, and you use.
Maybe Rocket builds a bomb and hacks or something. Who cares?
Yeah.
I don't. I'll find out another day, perhaps.
Yeah.
So freaking don't get rid of that llama. That's the best character in the game.
It is the best. It's the fifth Guardian for sure.
You got to pay a fine to the cops. You do a little heist with a very mean lady who likes Monstars.
Yeah.
You
steal from her.
You can play a ball and cup game in Nowhere, but only play once when it's not a con job to make a free $1,000, baby.
Actually, Jacob was just never man enough to try it again after that, despite my
pleading.
Because
I know a con when I see one.
Just here's what you do.
That guy did job to work.
If you lose, the second that cup comes up, you just hit the
Josh,
PS button and you try it again.
Too fast. The autosave is like instantaneous.
No,
we learned
it's
that
not.
when we tried to cheat out of those kids who stole money from me a few scenes later.
Well, that's because you're an idiot and you got money stolen from you by kids.
I backed out the second those kids stole money from me, and it still took.
Yeah, you shouldn't have played ball with them.
Autosave is... I didn't even play ball with them. I just walked up to them and did little finger guns, and then they stole money from me.
Yeah, that's what I would have done if some idiot came up to me and did finger guns.
Those kids know about the finger gun curse that I brought into existence earlier on the research log, and they were like, what an insult this is, Peter Quill, and they stole money from him.
I guess that's one way of looking at it,
yeah. Anyway. Cosmo's in this. Cosmo's in this a lot, actually. Cosmo the Russian cosmonaut dog.
Yes.
He has psychic powers now.
He does.
I assume that's from the comics. I don't know or care. Yeah. It's really funny in this.
At one point, he dreams back to life on Earth with Papa Khrushchev. It's quite sweet.
He dreams of his original family before he was taken away by the Khrushchev. He dreams of his family before he was taken away to be on a spaceship.
It was probably Papa Khrushchev.
Let's find out right now.
That's Laika the space dog. It's a completely different dog.
Who cares?
It's not a golden retriever.
I'm looking up Cosmo the space dog, and we're going to find out in Marvel canon where it came from.
Is this going to be like when we looked up Watto's Wikipedia page?
Yeah. He has high-level telepathy and telekinesis in the comics. It was to be assumed.
And the Jedi, what do you know?
Go watch the Lego Star Wars stream.
Dude, those streams.
We learned so many things about Star Wars.
I think that second Lego Star Wars stream is like the best stream I've been a part of on the channel, like easily.
Don't worry about it.
I'm not trying to give it a free plug or anything, but you should go watch it. It was quite funny. I actually went back and rewatched it because I had so much fun during it.
Cosmo certainly makes it sound like Cosmo had a normal human family before he was selected to go into outer space. Whatever you say. The reason Cosmo gets introduced into the narrative at all is because after doing their crime shenanigans, getting fined by the police, they run off to do more crimes to get money to pay off their other crimes. Doesn't matter. It's a whole big adventure robbing Lady Hellbender. As it turns out, they go to pay their fine with the cops, and something very, very funky is going on.
Yeah.
The Nova Corps is being infected by
some sort of
something evil and mysterious, which is why they go to Cosmo, because Cosmo is a reliable and powerful third party that Quill knows and trusts. Whereupon Cosmo introduces, again, I don't know if this is a comic thing or not, the magical room that can teleport you anywhere in the entire galaxy. And
I want to know how much did that cost on eBay, because I want one.
But that's a good example, I think, of how this whole thing is structured, because this game's put together, I think, fairly intelligently. Like like I was just mentioning, you go on a little heist to steal a bunch of money from Lady Hellbender, which seems like just a wacky, zany story for them to do to go get the money that they need to move the plot forward, but it's pretty important. And later on, the magical room that can teleport you anywhere is pretty crucial to the bad guys' plan, and one of the more important phases of stopping them is preventing them from using that teleport anywhere room to achieve their evil Bitcoin mining goals.
Correct.
We'll get to that in a minute. We eventually discover through the process of investigating who these bad guys are and what's going on. It's the Church of Universal Truth. Again, I don't know if these are comic book villains or not. I don't care. The trailers did show them off a little bit and say these guys are the bad guys, but it takes them a little while to really be formally introduced.
Yeah.
And I think I don't remember the details of the trailers for this game that much because I only watched each of them like once.
I don't remember them being shown at all.
I remember going in having my already a guess of what the villains were doing, so I think enough was shown that at least I was able to figure out what was going on.
I only watched the stuff at E3. So.
Gotcha. Which is that these guys are using at this point, I guess, Soulstone, because it seems like they were only able to do this because of at this scale because of Soulstone magic.
Yeah.
They are basically giving people delusional dreams that they live in of perfect lives or regrets from their lives corrected, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
And while they persist on a mental level, mostly just within that illusion, their physical body and outwardly performance is simply to execute the will of the Church of Universal Truth.
To spread the promise, as it were.
To infect other people with this head fake vision.
Yeah.
And what is nice is that you may think at first, why are the Guardians uniquely predisposed to being able to shake this off? But really, when we see the Nova Corps being attacked, or earlier in the chapters when we were investigating what was going on with the Nova Corps, we see bodies everywhere, and we see infected guys, people who have bought into the promise, killing other Nova Corps cops.
It's clear that the amount of people buying into it is not everyone. Our heroes aren't just immune because they are. It seems like there's a large amount of people who are.
The problem is that most of the people who are rejecting it and fighting it off are then getting shot in the head by the other people.
That is correct.
It makes it somewhat problematic to move forward. But yeah, this is also part of why Drax gets significant play in this, because he's, other than Peter, who actually has a mom that he loves who's dead, most of the other characters' biggest regrets are not things that they would really want to wallow into having fixed.
Yeah.
We find out, for example, later on that Gamora, did she kill Nebula, or was responsible
she killed her.
She had to kill Nebula, and she's obviously a little bit twisted over that.
Yeah.
Groot would like to have his people back, probably. Rocket would. I don't think they ever say exactly what Rocket's vision is.
I think it's just him probably not being experimented on,
and also probably that inmate that he was I think there was another character that died in his escape attempt that he mentions briefly. So maybe they would have been around. But it's Peter has seemingly had enough time to be. I shouldn't say he's gotten over his mom being dead, but he's gotten over it well enough.
He's been able to process.
Yeah,
he's been able to process. He's gone through the 5 stages of grief, most likely.
He's pretty much dealt with it.
Yeah.
So he's able to shake off a vision of being able to miraculously save his mom. From being killed by aliens, not by cancer. Right. Pretty easily. I guess technically she was killed by aliens and cancer.
She was killed by alien super cancer.
She was killed by alien super cancer that was put into her brain by Kurt Russell. sequel.
Yeah.
And it was not good. It was bad.
It was box office poison, as it were.
It wasn't box office poison. It was box office gold. Those movies did very well for themselves. Spider-Man is making a lot of money right now.
It really is.
He's making a lot of money.
Film is dead.
It's a good movie. So that Spider-Man's a good movie. It's
Spider-Man 3-2 is a very, very, very good movie, and I enjoyed it greatly.
Does that mean
it is killing cinema?
Does that mean that Far From Home was Spider-Man 2-3?
Correct.
Cool. I like this. I like this system a lot.
We went from Spider-Man 1-3, Spider-Man 2-3, and then Spider-Man 3-2.
Oh man, I can't wait for Spider-Man 4-1.
Oh man. Uncharted territory, just like Tom Holland in Uncharted, coming soon to an FU. It's January near you.
It's not in January. They moved it to February to mask the fact that it's an FU. It's January movie. Did you know that Tom Holland is going to play Fred Astaire in a Fred Astaire biopic? I know you know because I told you, Joshua, that a little while ago. Here's the thing, right? Tom Holland, good actor. Tom Holland also, like, acrobatic, good dancer. I'm willing to bet that with a lot of training, he can probably convincingly do Fred Astaire looking stuff for a little while. He's too short.
Yeah.
He is too short.
I remember when you told me, you were like, "Hey, Josh, they're making a biopic based on Fred Astaire."
And you were like, "Oh, cool."
No, and he said, and they've casted a young actor who looks like Fred Astaire to a certain amount and is able to do a lot of gymnastic stuff and is probably able to pull off the dance moves. There's only one problem.
Box office numbers.
Yeah, there's only one problem, and I said it's Tom Holland, and you said it's Tom Holland.
Oh boy, I don't usually get bent out of shape of whether actors look like the people they're portraying.
Me neither.
But like he's too short.
He's really short. I say that being not that tall myself, and you being much shorter than me.
Yeah,
that's
it's
right.
true.
Called out. But
called out for what?
I have no idea, man. I'm just riffing.
Anyway, but the. Yeah, what were we talking about? We were talking about
the promise
and
Drax.
Yeah.
No, Peter is who
by the way,
about.
the sequence where you're brought inside the Universal Church of Truth's ship, I think was one of. I guess it wasn't the first.
It was just terrible.
No, it was good until after the. I think
the story part was good, and then the gameplay in that section sucked.
See, what's weird is that it ran well until after, like a couple rooms after the promise bit.
Sucked, even if it was able to run well.
I think I freaked the game out at some point during that. I'll have to replay it.
It doesn't matter.
But the point is, during that segment, I think I said it to you a couple times before that, but especially during that segment, I occasionally looked at you and went, "Eidos Montreal almost made a Final Fantasy game."
Yeah,
and
the visuals on screen. It had a couple of parts in particular of this game are like, this is reused reused FF Origins idea or whatever.
FF Nova concept art.
Yeah, or whatever.
And you were like. You were usually just pissed off at me or like shut up, but towards the end, one time,
I remember it
during the boss fight against Fing Fang Foom, I was like, these guys almost made a Final Fantasy game, and you looked like you wanted to cry. Because for those who don't know, Eidos Montreal, after the success of Deus Ex Human Revolution, we're almost going to make the first proper Western-developed Final Fantasy game.
Yep.
Then president of Square Enix, Wada, for all his many faults, including currently being discussed because the current president is talking about NFTs and cloud and the metaverse and blockchain. Wada oversaw Shinra Technologies, which was their cloud gaming division, which cost them
crashed and burned,
and they lost like $17 million
it was about
on it.
17 million. Yeah.
But he was very supportive of the international Square Enix studios, whereas the new guy has been and I don't say this even as a criticism very focused on reviving the Japanese end of Square Enix's game development business.
Of course, yeah.
And that's hey, you know what? That's not a problem because
they got to deal with their own stuff sometimes.
Yeah, the Western studios, they don't need as much help, though things have been screwed up for them for the last while here because for a lot of freaking people at Eidos Montreal did Mankind Divided, which was mixed reception, and then they got shoved onto the Tomb Raider.
got put on freaking Tomb Raider support team.
Well, no, that's the thing. They didn't get put on Tomb Raider support team. Basically, what happened was when the Avengers project came down the pipeline,
they had to go finish it.
It was basically like, hey, we think Avalanche is the studio best equipped to do this. The one that we're going to give this to, we're going to let them oversee our games as a service stuff moving forward. But we already have this third game like started and planned, and it's coming out. So Eidos Montreal, you just take over and finish it. Somebody else's video game, just go ahead and wrap that up. I am very glad that they got their own project where it seems like they got to have a lot of creative freedom with the art design and other aspects of it, and they made something really wild and interesting. It's the
only good product made besides Jedi Fallen Order since the Disney acquires Marvel and Star Wars.
You mean video game product?
Yeah, video game product made out of the Disney acquires Star Wars, Marvel, and God.
I've heard vaguely good things about like some mobile phone games that have come out since then.
That doesn't count.
I know. I'm not saying it. I was about to say not that counts, but
and we can't forget, the rollicking success that Square is sure to have with Final Fantasy VII. The First Soldier.
It's for Korea and Japan. I'm sure it will do fine.
Coming to a phone near you, but probably not too near you because I know you're not going to download it.
It's a freaking asset flip of a AAA video game developed by an outside studio. I hold no ill will towards First Soldier. But
Jacob, don't you want to be the first soldier?
Why is that so funny? Anyway,
let's continue.
But no, with regards to that, it's like, hey, listen, you know what? For all of the metatextual problems with them, like Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2, like were like fun to play video games for the most
absolutely.
part. Just like everything surrounding them was
it's just that EA, as Donkey once said, it's EA. They'll find some way to F it up.
Absolutely. Fallen Order, Jedi Fallen Man was pretty good. Marvel's Avengers, the live service video game. As far as I know, I mean, when they last said still hasn't turned a profit, it was by like a huge margin, and I don't think that game's sales have improved substantially.
They have not.
So I'm gonna say they're still way in the hole on that. Would be my guess. And honestly, I really hope people actually buy this Guardians game. People were really down on it. It's like everything that people want. And like the people who are pissed off about it, the same people who are like, I want shorter games that are single player and story driven. I want them announced sooner to release. I want the developers to be taken care of properly. And it's like, it seems like we got all of that. It was announced like barely 6 months before launch, got at least have semi-decent marketing. It's for a major IP, but it's not full of the type of corporate crap that you would expect and at this point associate with the I shouldn't even say with the Marvel games because the Spider-Man games have been fine.
Yeah.
The Wolverine game is probably going to be fine.
I always forget about the Spider-Man games because that just feels like a completely different thing.
Yeah,
from
absolutely.
All the other Marvel games.
It's really just Avengers.
It's just,
that people associate with this crap. This isn't infected by any of that stuff. It's just a good video game. And I'm gonna be really bummed out if people miss out on this just because of the stigma of Square Enix is making it, and Square Enix also made Avengers. Which I kind of feel bad talking about because there are people at Crystal Dynamics who worked very hard on that game. But oh well, it was because of a higher up decision making that game was a mess. Regardless, this game was good. I hope it gets sequels or DLC or something. High quality. I'm not like, it doesn't end off on a sequel hook where I'm like, oh man, I need to see what happens next or whatever. It's actually a fairly like self-contained. If there was no sequel, I wouldn't be left worried about any dangling plot threads. That's something that's nice about this game.
Exactly.
It's just kind of its own thing. But anyway, the art that what I was getting at is that the art design in this game is really, really good. Some of the alien, like the initial quarantine zone looks so interesting and wacky. Lady Hellbender's planet is neat. You do spend, as you commented, a lot of time just inside of spaceship hallways and hangars.
Yeah, which I mean, it's a space game. You know what's going to happen. It's like if you make a Star Wars game. I mean, that's one of the things that I know a lot of people really liked about Fallen Order. Is it really kind of
you're never in a spaceship.
Yeah, it shook up the aesthetic
game.
Of Star Wars. Besides a bit on Kashyyyk, where it's a bit more run of the mill look. It's Wookiee planet. Besides that, it's very much like Fallen Order is very much divorced from most Star Wars aesthetic design. A lot of people like that.
Yeah, the only time you're ever in a spaceship hallway is in the one flashback sequence. Really, I guess you have the final dungeon of the game, but even then it looks also so different.
And it's also really short.
It's short,
and also it adds to the air of that final dungeon because this is like more high stakes. Yeah, this is like the stuff from the movies.
It's different from what we've seen before in this game, but it's also even though it's like industrial imperial hallways, it's all underwater with windows and stuff, so it looks different. Yeah. Spoilers for the ending of Jedi Fallen Order. The final level's underwater.
Oh no.
But anyway, hey listen. You know what? We can't protect you from everything in this world. All right. Why don't you just play video games that you care about, or watch them on this channel?
Yeah, idiots.
Yeah. Anyway, art design in this game is great. Lady Hellbender's planet. It's like, to be fair, it's a little bit of like wow, woohoo, like generic weirdo alien planet, but it looks nice enough. The interior of all of the interiors in the Church of Universal Truth
look
spaceship
insanely good.
Look fantastic.
You spend too much time on it.
Yeah, you spent a little bit too much time there, maybe. Nowhere looks fine. Nowhere looks kind of similar to the way that it does in the movie.
Yeah, it's very similar.
Which is fine because it looks fine in the movie and it looks good here. Where do you even go after that? Because you go back. You try to go back to nowhere. No. You go to the underground caves to fix Drax's broken brain.
Drax is bad guy after that.
Because Drax.
So we were on this. It got super sidetracked. So we started getting. So Peter Quill obviously had baggage at one point, and he's kind of gotten over it, which is why he's able to kind of reject the perfect past. Yes. But obviously we have the issue of Drax.
Well, before you even get to Drax, this is where this is where really the real antagonist of the game, who's I don't even remember the dude's Raker's his name.
The bad guy.
The guy who runs the Church of Universal Truth, but he is using, and the reason that our characters have any real emotional investment and hang up in doing all of this is because Nikki, Peter Quill's daughter, we don't get confirmation because the only person who would know for sure, Corell, Nikki's mom, she gets big killed. Nikki seems
super murdered.
Nikki certainly seems to think that Peter Quill is her dad after she does some research because she, following both the revelation that her dad may be around, alive, and fairly cool, and also her mom being dead, is very willing to give into a vision of living together as a perfect little nuclear family. And I guess the only reason she becomes so important is because the Soul Stone is like embedded in her, or whatever.
It's the weird gunk monster, Magus, or whatever it's called.
I guess she was the first one to get infected with this breed of the Promise. That's why she's so central. Plus, she's shooting Soul Stone powers out of her hands.
Yeah. Basically, it killed the Corell right in front of her, and it was like, oh, this one's gonna be really primed for it.
Yeah.
And then just was like, okay, this will be the one that I possess because it's a kid. A kid's going to be a lot easier with this much baggage and this much tragedy is going to be a lot easier to convince.
And also
evil she's
goo.
Right there.
There's evil goo came out of the stone.
No. We caused the evil goo when we got into a bug shooting contest with Rocket Raccoon.
Which you can, if you know about it ahead of time, just not shoot the thing when you're having the contest with Rocket Raccoon, and he'll shoot it instead, and then it's his fault that the universe
almost dies. And you get to nag him about it for the rest of the game.
Yeah. I will say, one thing that was disappointing was at the very beginning when you're in Peter Quill's room on Earth going through stuff, it's like you look at the poster for Not Gremlins, and he's like, it's amazing to think that all that destruction was caused by one simple mistake. And it's
just
like
evil.
And you're setting up for the Soul Stone thing. What I was really disappointed by was he looks at the actual poster for actual Tron, not fake made up Tron because branding and licensing and Walt Disney Company, and he's like, it'd be so cool to ride on those motorcycles. And there was one bit where all the characters got on hover bikes, and I was like, oh man, here's the freaking KOTOR swoop bike minigame sequence. And it didn't happen.
It was really sad.
I
was really sad.
The sequences where you fly the Milano and shoot bang were not amazing by any stretch of the imagination.
The dogfight was actually I didn't play it, but it looked at least slightly okay.
It was totally fine.
Yeah.
The game was too long, so I won't say like I could have done with one or two more of them, but like it was fun. It was fun enough. It was totally acceptable. It was fine. Yeah. I kind of wish there'd been one or two more sequences like that, but I know that there was nowhere you could have put them in the game where it would have benefited the pace at all. So it's totally fine. I guess technically speaking, during the final Milano sequence, you could fly around and shoot bang more, but your objective is simply to fly through the stage quickly.
Yeah.
Perhaps if I could always boot, because you can do a chapter select after you beat the game. I could boot up that chapter and just fly around and shoot bang and see how the game even responds to that. But anyway, one of the bigger concerns with this game is Peter having apparently been inadvertently, to be fair, a deadbeat dad for the last 12 years.
Yeah,
and
granted, it's made a point of that Corel very explicitly did not tell him,
did not ever bring this up with him.
Yeah, and it was it was like, oh yeah, I met her a couple years after that. And she didn't bring it up.
Yeah, he does mention that he saw her a few years after they literally hooked up.
Yeah.
And nothing was mentioned. But yeah, he clearly likes Corel, and likes this kid well enough. And in addition, saving the galaxy is that's a bonus.
It'll help build their resume and their street cred, so they'll get more people to hire them, so they won't be eating bell peppers and beef with no beef.
But to be completely fair, there would be no one to hire them anyway at the rate that the Universal Church of Truth
because
starts spreading and infecting
that crap spreads in like 24 hours, dude.
It seems like they take over entire planets at several points.
I'm not gonna lie. That was one thing that kind of took me out of the experience to an extent. I was like,
how is it spreading
I'm
this
like, I know
fast?
hyperspace exists in this universe, but still, this would not spread this fast. Because it's like, we're on like a freaking Nova Corps ship at one point for like an hour and a half. And they're still slowly, and there's still armed resistance.
Fighting and armed resistance. And you're like, how are they taking over whole planets with this crap?
Yeah.
Maybe they're taking over cities when they're mining that Bitcoin. When we see the big cannon that's mining
about the
faith
Bitcoin
energy
mine.
Bitcoin. Because basically what's happening is the villains are basically just putting the humans, putting other people, aliens, humans, whatever, are putting people into this daydream state and then using their physical energy to just mine Bitcoin.
Yeah,
that's the villain's plan. He's building a massive. He's taking all these computers from all over the galaxy and mining Bitcoin off of
basically
all of them.
Bugahagen from Final Fantasy VII. He grabs the spirit energy and uses them to power his massive telescope.
I don't think so.
Oh, no. Dang, you're right.
But no, they freaking there are bits where you see the people because like some people are being used as soldiers, but when you're going through the Universal Church of Truth ship, it's like there are
billions.
There are massive wings of the ship that are just people standing around, presumably tripping out on their visions of their perfect lives, and there's just gold energy flowing out of them.
Billions of people with with golden bitcoins just raining
so
out
much,
of their bodies.
So much Ethereum filling up big golden tubes of energy.
Yeah.
To be fair,
is this what NFTs will do, Jacob?
Long term, yes.
Okay, hell yes. I'll buy 10,000.
These people are that's the thing, right? Is that they're trading bitcoins for NFTs. They're all just staring at a perfect NFT.
Oh my gosh, that monkey.
And trading Bitcoin, which the value of which at least will hypothetically appreciate.
And is also slightly stable.
Here's the thing. The guy is mass producing, algorithmically generating Bitcoins, and he's algorithmically generating tons of cheap NFTs that you can have no resale value whatsoever because they're all for specific individuals for massive quantities of Ethereum. That's what's going on in this game. It's not very complicated.
It really is a metaphor about how Square Enix is going to ruin the video game industry.
They're not going to ruin
along with Ubisoft and EA and all those other assholes.
I was about to say, let me tell you something right now about all that crap.
Yeah.
The freaking of all of the companies. When Square Enix tells me we are very interested in creating blockchain video games, of all of the major companies, I know that one will fail the fastest.
Yeah, because Square will be, as they usually are, will be very, unless we're talking about Square Productions or whatever that movie company was called.
I'm pretty sure it was called Square Pictures.
Square Pictures.
Which is stupid because films are 16:9. They're freaking they're rectangles, idiots.
Yeah. No.
No one wants to watch a 4:3 movie.
And that's not even a square. That'd be a 3:3 movie. Disgusting.
You're right. I know.
But yeah, no. It's as we've learned from Square in the last while, right? It's It's like they put a lot of money into like Luminous, and they put a lot of money into Shinra Incorporated in the real world.
Yeah.
But it's like if it fails even a little bit, they will pull out of that crap fast.
They will bail quick.
See, EA has more money than some nations, and
many nations,
and they will just dump all of the money into trying to become the company to create the Matrix or Skynet.
Who knows? Who's gonna get there first at this rate?
It's not going to be Ubisoft, I'll tell you that.
It's not going to be Ubisoft, no.
They went in so early that they've already died.
They haven't died yet. They could still make money. Hey, listen, all the
Ubisoft Quartz, if you want to sponsor this video.
If you want to sponsor this stream with this video, we will sell out as fast as possible.
I will buy so many pictures of monkeys.
We're gonna do like you know those people, the people who like, because Raid Shadow Legends doesn't give a crap really, and people do really extreme like they get so close to saying this game sucks in some of those ads, and they still say, yeah, go ahead, it's fine. If we got sponsored by Ubisoft Quartz to sell NFTs, I would push it as close as I could. I don't care if they terminated it and ripped up the check afterwards, because it would be so funny.
I think that's when you know you've arrived as a YouTuber, and I think this is when you could just quit, is when you get an offer to advertise for Raid Shadow Legends, and you literally just make the Jerry Freeman edit of the JonTron video.
I mean, I'm sure that if I wanted to, I could call Raid Shadow Legends and say I'm interested in being sponsored. I don't know how these.
Jacob, you got to do it.
I think they're sponsoring just about anybody at this point. I'm not going to be Joshua.
Brought to you by Raid. This epic Reddit moment is brought to you by Raid Shadow Legends.
I'm not going to be. I will not be sponsored by Raid Shadow Legends. Not because I have any objection to like. Number one, I think if I was ever in a position to do that, I would try to be I would try to only promote things that I actually like. But no. No, really, what it is I don't want to sacrifice my ability to make fun of Raid Shadow Legends. It's one of my few pleasures in life to be able to make fun of Raid Shadow Legends.
I mean, you could still have, what's that other one? Rise of Kingdoms? You can still make fun of that one.
Yeah, but no one knows what that is.
I do. I get a lot of ads for it.
You got to make fun of Raid Shadow Legends, man. It's what a good name too. Can we just talk about how
bad.
Can we talk about how good of a name Raid Shadow Legends is?
What about Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes?
See, that's fine. That's okay. That name, that's not terrible. But here's the question, right? So Raid, to me,
it is the most ambitious mobile RPG game to date, Jacob.
Raid to me implies, number one,
don't pay attention to the fact that KOTOR is on phones for like $3.
Raid to me implies, number one, bug killer. Number two, MMO gameplay, right?
Correct.
Of late, high level, high end gameplay, but you're just labeling your entire game as Raid. So I'm like, okay, all right. That's an ambitious claim right there. Then you say Shadow Legends to me, all right? You say Shadow Legends.
So what makes them a Shadow Legend instead of just a regular legend?
A few things come to mind. I think to myself, is this another entry in the Shadow the Hedgehog, Shadow of the Colossus?
I really hope so.
Like this is the like the throwback game, like how there's like Monster Hunter Generations that has levels and enemies from all throughout.
Yeah.
But I say it's clearly not that. Then I say to myself, but shadows imply secrecy and hidden truths and something in the murky depths. But legends imply things that are well known and historic and so how can something be a shadow legend? I don't understand.
It's like a shadow drop, right? So it's like
okay.
It's a legend is announced, right? Like Homer gets up on stage after he's written the Iliad and the Odyssey, and he's really famous, and he's like, "Yo, our next legend is going to be Daikatana," and he gets up on stage and says that, and he says, "And you can read it right now," and he throws it out to the crowd. Everyone goes crazy. That's a shadow legend.
So a shadow legend is
that's why he's rating it. Is because he's rating the scene with this shadow legend that he is publishing in that moment.
So Raid a shadow legend raid is when an already extremely influential and popular artist shadow drops their latest work in an extremely aggressive manner.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I'm glad we finally cracked the code on this.
Too.
I don't know what it has to do with the content of the video game Raid Shadow Legends, but at least I understand the title now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so from here, there's a kind of there's a number of what we're really kind of glossing over is there's a lot of team drama and bickering that for the most part works. Some of the time during the actual gameplay, just because
there's just not enough voice lines.
You hear a lot of barks repeated in actual gameplay, but during scripted scenes, it's all fine. The main drama comes from early on. There's a little bit of Drax does not trust Gamora, which makes sense. Though later on, the primary thing is Rocket is really pissed at Quill for mostly stuff that's his own fault because Rocket is just an asshole.
Yeah, and also them deciding to throw him across a massive gorge.
I think even if you stop that from happening, he'll still be pissed off at you.
Yeah, he's still pissy.
But anyway,
it comes across. I mean, like as a person playing the game, you're like, okay, I get why this is happening, but it still comes across as just a lot of the things he's getting angry about just feels like he's being overly whiny.
Yeah, because he's an overly whiny person.
No, and that's why I get it, but it's like you're just sitting there like, ah.
Well, you need that character in this kind. I guess you don't need, but it's fun to have that character in the story who is like, why save the entire galaxy? Not completely, like he's not a complete idiot, but there is like a certain he is resistant initially to fighting against. To be fair, a completely seemingly unstoppable, massive enemy that they should have no way of being able to stand up against.
Correct.
Once he realizes the scale of what's happening, he's much more favorable towards. Well, we don't have a plan, but if we had one, I'd be very willing to go and kick this guy's ass. But yeah, a number of things kind of happen at this point. What's left of the Nova Corps forces, they just leave. They bounce. They're like, we're not sticking around to get infected by this crap. We're not going to help people.
Correct.
This is one of the people that you can have a little philosophical debate with and possibly convince them to return in the 11th hour to actually help out and save everybody.
Yeah.
Drax gets infected with the brain juice. Because he wants his wife and daughter back. You have to go into some spooky caves and find Adam Warlock and hang out with Mantis for a bit to solve all that stuff.
Mantis becomes the comic relief character during the third act because everyone else is pretty serious. And
everybody else is kind of serious and sad.
And everyone else is kind of not in the mood to be cracking stupid, Joss Whedon one-liners and James Gunn one-liners.
You say that James Gunn one-liners. So the most,
those I shouldn't have said that as a pejorative. I don't mean that as a negative. I'm just saying the tone doesn't really allow for those type of moments.
My point was going to be that of the you can complain that in those Marvel movies often they are too willing to undercut serious moments with jokes, but honestly, of the bunch, the James Gunn movies are kind of the least likely to do that.
Yeah. I'm more just talking about the formula in general.
I understand.
Those were the two directors that came to mind.
Yeah,
whether that's fair or not.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine because James Gunn directed the Guardians films. No, I gotcha. But no, you are right. Around this point in time, we need Mantis in the group because again, I don't know about her in the comics versus in the movies. I don't know anything. I don't know anything about the Guardians of the Galaxy comics. In this version, she's not an empath like she is in the films. She's like a future seer. She can see different timelines and possible futures. Maybe that's how she was in the comics. I don't know. I really don't care. But the result,
it works for this story.
The result of how they've written her basically is that she is like a complete schizo.
Yeah.
Because she's like not literally living multiple parallel timelines, but she's just
constantly seeing snippets from different timelines.
She's very detached from what's currently happening in physical reality.
Yeah.
So without even deliberately trying to undercut seriousness, she's just kind of a wacky, fun character while
whimsy, as you might say.
Yes, while Peter, Gamora, and even Rocket at this point are taking the situation a little bit more seriously during that sequence. Honestly, that cave sequence is a good example in terms of talking about how these guys handle the art direction of this game.
Correct.
Because it is probably, other than spaceship hallways, the most generic looking part of the game in terms of just like the aesthetic design, because you're just in a cave.
Yeah, but it's fine.
And it looks, I was going to say, I think it looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, that was one part of the game that really stood out, because like I said before, it's like, I think for the most part, as the game went on from beginning to end, I started to lose interest, but that part really started to draw me back in, even though the setting wasn't necessarily really cool. It was like, well, one, the entire thing with Drax going on, it's like, it's telegraphed pretty obviously, but at the same time, it's like, okay, involving Mantis in it. And Mantis
we're gonna have to fix his brain.
Yeah. Mantis literally mind jacking Drax and basically forcing him to not kill the good guys. To go on a soul searching journey was quite fun and is different and kind of drew me back in at a point where I was starting to get pretty bored with the story.
And you meet up with Adam Warlock. You have to go inside of Drax's brain head, which had an absolutely hilarious moment where he has a vision of Thanos, is one of his many inner demons. And I don't know if it always looks like this because I haven't looked up other footage, but the head of Thanos appears and laughs mockingly at Drax inside of his headspace, and he runs off to go and attack him and try to kill him. I don't know if it was a glitch. I don't know if like a fog.
I think there was supposed to be
probably
smoke.
Fog or smoke was supposed to fade in. It was literally just like the bust of Thanos with hard cutoff points around the bottom of his neck.
It was like his neck was like 4 polygons.
And I don't think he faded out. I think he was deleted out of existence in one frame. It was really funny. After that, though, again, with regards to like solid art design, when you're inside of Drax's mind, there's bits of it. It starts to become like a Dr. Seuss book.
Yeah,
it was really wild looking.
It definitely looked like a scene out of the Lorax or something.
Or like Seuss Land at Universal Studios Islands of Adventure.
And the Islands of Adventure also have the Marvel.
Yeah,
Whoa.
Yeah, whoa. Hey, they're gonna build that new theme park. They got all that new land.
They better put that Donkey Kong December part in it.
They're gonna build the Mario part first. Japan's gonna get Donkey Kong before we are, probably.
Donkey Kong December.
They're gonna get the Seth Rogen section of the park probably several years before we do.
Dude, I can't wait for the standalone Seth Rogen Donkey Kong movie.
He's gonna get a standalone Donkey Kong movie.
Who's gonna be Diddy Kong? Tom Holland?
Tom Holland is probably Diddy Kong.
Hell yeah,
how did you do that? How did you nail that in one?
Because there's only one guy in his 20s.
There's many other options, but that is the correct option.
Well, Chris Pratt is already Mario.
Absolutely. But Chris Pratt's not in his 20s. But
not anymore. I'm talking about young, recognizable actors from the Marvel scape.
He's got to be, kind of young and spunky and have kind of a higher pitched voice to play off.
Maybe the guy who
Seth
plays
Rogen.
Ned from Spider-Man.
Yeah, he could be a good Diddy, actually.
I think he would actually
Jacob,
do a good
whatever
job.
his name is, he could be. Yeah, you know what? Honestly, you're right. He would actually be. He could be.
No,
kind of
I was
a good
thinking
Diddy.
about who would actually be okay in the role, and that was immediately I was like, oh, the next guy over. From
the guy who's
Spider-Man.
next to him. He could be Diddy. Now here's the question, right? When does Daisy get introduced? Do they wait until
He names Daisy?
There's a lot.
Right?
Listen, there's a lot of Mario characters we have to introduce, right? Because like, okay, so for example, Yoshi's going to be in this movie.
Gonna be in it,
Cranky Kong's going to be in it. But like, how many characters do they actually cross over with? Because like, if they do Metroid's not going to be in the same universe.
Okay,
you know, Star Fox ain't going to be in the same universe. What are the other Mario characters who can show up in a Mario and Donkey Kong movie?
Wario and Waluigi will be the antagonists in the second movie. I feel very confident.
Yeah, I'll allow that. They'll team up with Mario at the end of the movie to fight a greater evil, maybe the subspace emissary.
That would be insane if that happened. But
that's how they start the Smash Brothers Marvel crossover, blah blah blah, whatever, who cares?
It doesn't matter. But yeah, so I feel confident saying that those two will be the antagonists of that next game.
Next film?
Yeah, next film, sorry. Daisy will also be in that next film.
Introduced later on, once we've gotten Mario and Peach out of the way, as a later love interest for Luigi. And the trailers will have like, why do you always get the princess? Why can't I have a princess? And then it'll cut to a shot of Daisy.
Like a shotgun and Waluigi in the chest.
And some insipid like romantic pop song will play for like 2 seconds in the trailer, and cut to a reaction shot of Luigi, and Charlie Day will say something funny.
I know, yeah.
It'll be really good.
It'll be really bad.
Now who plays Daisy?
Zendaya
plays Daisy. That's a movie.
I hate this. Everyone's from Spider-Man.
And everybody's in Spider-Man.
Wait a second. What if Willem Dafoe is Waluigi? Oh no!
And Alfred Molina is
Wario. Oh God, no! How could this happen?
Who does Jamie Foxx play?
He's Funky Kong.
Yes, he absolutely he is. Jamie Foxx is Funky Kong. It's all coming together, man. It's so good.
Who's Andrew Garfield?
I don't know who Andrew Garfield is yet. I don't know. We'll figure that out later. We'll figure this out another day.
Is Andrew Garfield Yoshi?
No, Yoshi's already cast. I forget who's playing him, but he's already listed.
Yoshi's not cast?
Yeah, Yoshi's freaking was listed in the voice cast for the new movie, dude.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah, he was.
That's a lie. You're lying to me right now. No. No.
I could have sworn it said Yoshi.
No, Yoshi's not on there. Who's on there again?
I freaking I
knew Yoshi wasn't on there.
Mario, Princess Peach, Luigi, Bowser, Toad, Donkey Kong, Cranky Kong, Kamek, Foreman, Spike. I feel like there were other people announced in that announcement.
Spike is a character.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it.
Oh my gosh.
Man, I could have sworn they cast Yoshi in that movie.
Jamie Foxx is going to be Funky Kong. If we
oh my god, when I searched who was voicing Yoshi in the Mario movie, one of the people also ask on Google, is Tom Holland Yoshi in the Mario movie?
Dude, if we are right about any of those picks, I'm going to end it all.
Going back to the Guardians of the Galaxy video game. Yeah, you go inside Drax's head, and this is where you... What's also interesting, not only do you get into his character stuff, if you find enough of his collectibles, you learn a lot about, like, his beliefs, his society, his culture.
Yeah, it's cool.
Which then plays heavily into when you go to hunt down Fing Fang Foom. It's like that's like a traditional like end of someone from his life, like, I failed at my various life objectives, and an honorable way for me to go out is attempting to slay Fing Fang Foom, the most powerful dragon in the galaxy.
If anyone was asking what word I just started laughing at and quoting nonstop, it was just Fin Fang Foom.
And they mentioned Fing Fang Foom early on because Drax proposes fighting and capturing Fing Fang Foom to deliver to Lady Hellbender. Yeah. And later on they comment, we wouldn't have been ready for it if we'd done it back then. But it's set up at the very beginning, and I don't know if he's from the comics or not. I think they made up if they didn't, or they either picked such a ridiculous name or made up such a ridiculous name so they knew you would remember it by the ending of the game when they decide we are out of options. There's no backup left anywhere in the galaxy. Once they get Drax back, they're like the only person who still has a standing army who hasn't been converted by the promise is Lady Hellbender.
Because all of her monsters can't be corrupted.
Her monsters can't be corrupted, and they're all hanging out on that little isle, on that one planet that's otherwise unoccupied there. There's no tactical advantage going after them, and they'd probably be hard to get to anyway. So if we can apologize to her for stealing from her and killing one of her beasts by delivering to her the greatest prize, Fin Fang Foom, then we can convince her perhaps to join us in our fight against the Universal Church of Truth.
That is correct.
Which is where the previously mentioned late game hour and a half or so side quest comes up that I'm sure some people may see as a pace-breaking killer, but I found to be fantastic because it's like a relative, I shouldn't say low stakes because it's very important, but it's like disconnected from we're fighting the bad guys with guns who are taking over the galaxy. It's the Guardians now functioning as a proper unit and all getting along and being friends, going on a wacky adventure, and it ends with them fighting a giant dragon.
Yeah, and that's why some people might consider that part filler, because there's also a prolonged sequence where they fight the abominable snowman.
They fight the Wendigo.
Yeah, it's literally called the Wendigo.
He says Wendigo.
And that's all it says.
Just like Groot.
Yeah, but it's a fun section because it is just it feels like a Saturday morning cartoon adventure. And honestly, after all the heavy stuff that had been happening for like the last 5 hours at that point, you need that break before the final act.
And even Ice Planet, they make kind of visually interesting. It's like got enough interesting stuff going on, both in terms of its level design and the plant life. That
every now and then, just an ODST drop pod falls out of the sky and explodes something.
The major gimmick is that there's these absolutely massive slabs of, I guess, ice that are forming a ring a ring around the planet. And
like Saturn.
They're unstable and just fall to the ground
fly out.
and stab into the ground like 10-kilometer tall freaking
why are you using them their metric
wafers
units,
for mass that you dip into the grape juice because you don't drink wine at church because you're good because good Baptists don't drink alcohol unless it's during Sunday football. Woo!
I don't know what you're talking about. It has to be Saturday morning football.
Woo! Anyway,
get ready for that national championship.
But there's just
ain't gonna be a good game.
It creates a really interesting like skybox and like the surrounding area when you can see the vistas, because there's just these big, massive, like obelisk looking rectangular chunks of earth that are just crashed into the ground all around you with massive craters around
cool.
them. It's visually neat, even in a relatively boring location. They find a gimmick.
It kind of reminds me of the idea for Earth in Cowboy Bebop, where it's
a little bit.
Meteors fall down at such a rapid pace that you have to like remap everything super fast.
Well,
that's kind of the vibe I get from it. It's like a more realized version of that.
I wouldn't say more realized. It's just like
it's a slightly different version.
Yeah, no, it's like almost more dangerous, more constant. Nobody lives on. It seems like nobody lives on this place.
Fang Foom to just be a freaking dragon. Like they kept building him up so much. I was like, oh, they're gonna do something to subvert it. So honestly, when he was just a dragon, I was really relieved.
You needed him to be just a dragon for when they do the freaking joke metal album cover when Peter Quill jumps in the air to catch his Walkman as Fing Fang Foom is directly behind him and explosions go off everywhere.
Oh, that was sick.
During the final battle, that was why he was a dragon. So Lady Hellbender could ride him and make the metal album
you
cover.
You see this fish, I'm gonna ride it as the antagonist of Pokemon Sapphire once said.
What's the antagonist of Pokemon Arceus or whatever it's called gonna want?
I don't know. What's the team name in that one?
I don't know anything about this game.
I don't know anything either. Hey, let's guess what the team name is based on all the dumb stuff they've done in the past. What region is it and what's it based off of?
It's based on Japan.
Again?
I don't know.
Haven't they done that like 4 times now?
Yeah, they're from Japan. What are you, racist?
No, I just want something new.
There's only so many places in the world, Joshua.
Yeah, we've done France, America, Japan. Where else is there? And England. Where else is there?
It takes place in known as the Hisu region, long before the events of the Diamond and Pearl and its remakes take place.
Oh, so it's in the same region.
It is stated that the objective of the game will to create Hisu's first Pokédex, because it's like placed a long time ago. It's based in it appears to be based on
like modern technology.
It appears to be based on Japan in the 19th century. It appears that the only modern technology is Pokeballs. But
okay, that's interesting.
To be very clear, I've only watched like 30 seconds of gameplay because every time that I saw trailers, it was running at about 13 frames per second.
Yeah.
And I am not a big frame rate guy.
Oh yeah.
But I was like, I can't
bad.
Look at this.
Yeah, no, like it was running worse than Breath of the Wild with a bunch of fire on screen, and that's really saying something. No, the team name will be like Team what do you think? Like Team Sleet?
Team Sleet.
Team Imperialism, if we're dealing with Japan in the 1900s.
Team Sleet.
Team Modernization. Team
Iron Sleet.
Because
they're gonna because it's an open world game where you're wandering around the wilderness,
Iron
so the bad guys will
Sleet.
want to industrialize and overrun the countryside, which is because this is
that's a big thing in Japanese folklore.
This is relevant.
Nature versus. I've seen Princess Mononoke. I'm educated.
I know everything there is to know about Japan. I've watched anime.
Hell yeah, baby!
But no,
wouldn't it be so cool to live in Japan, guys?
The bad guys are gonna want to bulldoze a bunch of land to build something, and you are going to have to explore the wilderness and document all the Pokemon that live here and stop them from ruining this natural paradise.
Those dang coal plants.
The
natural reservoir that gives millions of Magikarp life.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway,
we'd be better off without those Magikarp. You know what I'm saying?
I'd be better with a Magikarp on my plate, if you know what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, anyway, they fight Fing Fang Foom, which is actually a pretty fun boss fight.
Yeah, that was like the one boss fight late game, because we already talked about how some of the other fights late game are not very
The fight against Rakers is just nothing.
It's nothing, and the fight against freaking Magus
is so nothing.
Dude, the last good boss fight is the Fin Fang Foom fight.
It was a good fight, though.
It was a really good fight.
It felt like a freaking Final Fantasy XIV fight, because it's just constant AoE warnings and dodging out of the way of them. But it feels fun because you got all those different dodge effects for Peter with his jet boots.
Yeah.
And then you ride into battle alongside a bunch of monsters, and
it's sick.
Yeah, and then your team jumps out of the back of the ship, and they're all mysteriously wearing gold outfits that you didn't pull out of a loot crate. So I don't know how they got there. Anyway, I got spoiled on it ahead of time. So Joshua, when did you deduce that Nikki was definitely not actually Peter's kid?
Like almost immediately.
Okay, I was just wondering.
I hate to be that guy, but no, I called that from a million miles away, because I was like, I don't know, something about it. I'm like, okay. So they're setting all this up as if, okay, this is the perfect situation. They have the prompt of do the math, don't do the math, right? It's like they're setting everything up to say, yes, it points in that direction.
Indeed.
And then her perfect world is where, yeah, they were a family and it was meant to be.
Yeah, and it's harder for her if breaking her out of that includes also saying I'm not your dad, which makes it more interesting. But it's still like Peter still feels an obligation to be a father figure for her.
And that's kind of where I expected it to go. I was just like I didn't know if it was going to be like, oh, she's adopted, or oh, it was another guy, or oh, whatever else. Like I didn't know how it was going to be different.
I'll tell you something. I had a deep fear because I got spoiled that she was adopted. That was all I knew. During one of Gamora's little companion interaction things, she talks about how Kor-El sent her on a mission to assassinate the infant Kree royalty princess.
I forgot about that, dude. I had the same thought for a bit. It kind of dispersed, but in the moment when we read that, I was like, God, I hope that's not Nikki.
Or not Kree. What's the Chitauri? The Chitauri, because Nikki and Kor-El are Kree. The Chitauri are like weird bug things.
Yeah.
So like there was no feasible way that could have been it, but like for a moment my brain twitched,
same here, and then I was like, no, that's the wrong species. We're good.
Yeah, it couldn't happen.
They do try to kind of reinforce it. There's a part where they're like, oh, well, the Kree, the blue people, were like clamping down on like purity for kids, and it's like, oh, you know, if it's a spawn with like someone from Offworld, it's like the opposite of the Asari from Mass Effect, and they're like, those are ostracized instead of like the purebloods being ostracized or whatever.
Do not. The Kree have a council that's like, we preserve our perfect bloodline and we don't do. I got a little song called Race Mixing. It's called we got a little song about race mixing. It's called Don't You Do It.
Get out.
Yeah, they're very they're. To be fair, it's like even Kor-El is one of the few Kree we meet in the story is like, yeah, they're nuts. That's stupid.
Yeah.
It seems that her stated motivation when we meet her ghost inside the Soul Stone is like, I realize, I forget if she says specifically like that, because we find out that Nikki was a war orphan. I forget if she just says that she like didn't know the kid's parentage, so it would have been, so she would have been in danger, or if she was like, she determined that she was a half-breed.
I think it was just she didn't know, and since she didn't know, she wasn't going to take the risk.
But
it works that way because it's, so she was trying to hide him from the authorities because it was my kid.
The credit sequence implies that the Inquisition board or whatever for the Kree are still upset at her, so maybe she is a half-breed of some kind, or maybe she
does look a little bit different from
who knows?
Some of the other ones. Like, they leave it kind of ambiguous.
I'm sure they did that deliberately. Her nose doesn't look as harsh as other Kree we see, probably to make you think that she's half human.
Yeah, but yeah, I kind of called that right away, though. Mm-hmm. I kind of had a feeling, so I was like, yeah, especially when she became Lord Memory Darkness. I was like, the
conflict is more interesting if Peter isn't actually her dad.
Yeah, because that does make it a slightly more simple solution, because you go, hey, we can
you
never
lost
get
your
hurt,
mom, but I'm here now.
Yeah, that makes it a bit easier, and it's like, yeah, it's harder to say, yeah, you lost your family. Yeah, I'm not going to replace it, but I can try. I'm not what you're looking for, and I can't offer exactly what you're looking for. Yeah,
but I'm going to try to give you something new.
And they don't try to treat that as a reveal either. I think they knew that most players would be. I'm not going to say would
at least suspect it,
but I think that most players would at least think that there was a chance that they were going to subvert it.
If you're paying attention to Kor-El's language, the first time you talk to her spirit, she insists my daughter, not our daughter, and other stuff like that. And it's like if you're really keyed in, you're like, we would have gotten some kind of hard confirmation by now. So it's not that much of a surprise. But yeah, the final
and also when the other characters start pushing. The
other characters are like, oh man, Peter, you're a dad. I mean, to be fair, a lot of it is them hazing.
Yeah, no, but especially towards the end, especially like Gamora and Drax for the most part are like, no, we're gonna get your. We
are going to rescue your daughter, Peter Quill.
And it's like by that point you're like, yeah, no, this is going to get subverted because it's just they are spelling it out so. It's like we have no confirmation, but the characters
they're
keep spelling it out.
very dedicated to the idea of this being his kid.
Yeah, so that felt very much. I was like, yeah, no, never mind.
Yeah, obviously, I feel like we haven't really talked about it. This game's pretty funny. It's actually like a legitimately funny video game.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the humor for the most part.
I think the cast of the Guardians movies are really good, and I really like Dave Bautista's Drax. But I will not in any way. I'm not going to impeach any of these performances. And you were talking about that you like this Drax way more than the Dave Bautista Drax.
Granted, I haven't seen those movies in a while. I think I've only seen Guardians of the Galaxy 1 like 2 times, maybe 2.5 times. And then I've only seen 2 once. I really enjoyed both of them when I saw them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, nothing against Dave Bautista's Drax, because I really do like that character. But there's just this one's just deeper. There's more going on,
and he's he's really funny.
He's really funny. The jokes they make with his just kind of literal. It doesn't feel confined to just his.
Not understanding metaphors and stuff.
Yeah,
he does understand metaphors. It's kind of it's slightly different.
It's more they're kind of playing on his like very much straightforward and but at the same time sophisticated way of speaking.
Yeah.
By you know.
It's not that he doesn't understand metaphor. It's that he's extremely straightforward about things.
Yeah.
He can understand it, but sometimes he can actually go too far with it and not understand what's going on.
It's hard to explain because I don't have like any quotes or anything pulled up that I can like reference, but it's different in a way that feels both. I don't know how he is in the comics, but at the same time it feels like an extension of that character from the movie.
From the movies,
but at the same time it feels like its own thing. Mm-hmm. And I really appreciate it.
Yeah, there isn't as much to say about these interpretations of the characters, I feel, in terms of their unique writing beyond saying the guy who's playing Drax is really killing it and is written in a really funny way. Everybody's doing a very good job.
Yeah, but he's the standout of the group, I would say.
He's a standout. He gets the most work. Like all the other characters are good and fun and they have good dialogue, but it really feels like, you know, like Rocket is there for conflict generation early on. Peter's our main character, and Gamora is for the next game.
Gamora really feels like she's for the sequel.
It doesn't feel like she's a gap in the group. Like there's like she's a weak link in the writing of it, but just that she is like not getting as much work as the other people here, and you go that's probably because the next story will deal with her in a bit more heavy capacity, because now we've kind of resolved everything that was established about Drax in this game. We've kind of resolved.
Yeah, he's done.
We can assume that he's kind of going to be the static character.
Yeah, he's going to be the static character next time. I would guess that if there was a sequel, it would be a lot of Gamora character work, a bit more Rocket and Groot, but not much, and then Drax would be mostly the straight man.
Yeah, but and we get I think you can't go into this sequence without Lady Hellbender helping, but you get a lot of fun moments where there's like a big fight in front of you and Lady Hellbender blows it up. Eventually you get
it's like a big Star Wars fight.
If you convince Cosmo to come and help, he blows up enemies. If you convince
that's where you skip the 2 combat encounters. If you saved Cosmo from the promise of him being back on Earth playing with his nice Ukrainian family.
And if you convince the NovaCore supercomputer to come back and assist, they help blow up a room for you inside. They can seemingly teleport anywhere, which is pretty wild. There's some stuff in this that's like very like almost borderline fantasy in terms of how powerful.
I mean a lot of Marvel stuff is always like that.
Sure, yeah, but it was
just more into sci-fi.
It was just pretty. I mean, I guess I don't know. Again, these people almost made a Final Fantasy game. There's so much weird and wild imagery in this that you'd love to see in one of those types of games.
Yeah, no, dude, the ending of this game, even just like from the set piece design of it, felt very much like a Final Fantasy.
Felt like it had the color coordination of that really clear, like primary color art direction of a final dungeon.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if you've ever seen it, but there's the final dungeon of 13. You go into the dimension where cable news channels get their bumpers from.
Yeah.
Where there's just like these flying bits of geometry swooshing around you in all directions.
Terrifying.
But it's these bright,
the world where CNN and Fox win.
It's like these kind of like red and violet hues, with a kind of a darker background behind them. You get the final boss, the final dungeon sequence in 12. The color scheme of what's going on is actually quite similar.
Yeah, there's a lot of similar beats as well.
The difference is that where 12 skews kind of red and black, this one skews red, black, and gold. It's got gold. A lot lot of gold accents.
Because gold is the color of the Bitcoin that is being mined, and therefore it's kind of the primary
energy.
Yeah, it's kind of the primary color behind most of it. There's a bit of blue thrown in just
these
because of the
these
NFT
NFT images of your perfect life will not appreciate in value. I'm sorry, you are being conned.
That's basically what Peter says to Nikki.
He basically explains to Nikki, listen, Nikki, just because you missed out on the buying into Bitcoin early, and you're thinking you're going to slip into a new crypto market now, it's not going to work. You're being fleeced. Maybe Bitcoin and all this other stuff will like stay stabilized, and maybe it'll be important to the future economy. But this right now with NFTs, this is a con job. It's not real. This is other people trying to get actual currency that's gonna appreciate in value out of you.
And hey, you can come with me and my buddies. We all just have regular U.S. dollars that are backed by nothing but the word of our government, and we're gonna make our own future. And we'll
make as much money as we can from anybody that we can.
And hope to God we don't go into recession again here pretty soon.
Who knows? Anyway, you have to convince Nikki through some dialogue trees that I kind of imagine you can't fail.
No, there's
I don't
no
think they're
way
going to give you a game over screen there. But to be fair, like you have to, if the final real conflict of the game is convincing Nikki to give up on this because she's the linchpin holding the force of it together.
I forget what it's from, but it's the quote. I think it's a Fat Man Falling quote where it's so the climax takes place here or here depending on how somewhere between here and here depending on how smart you are. And it's like the climax is when you're having those dialogue options with Nikki.
Yeah, there's still technically
not when you fight Raker or Magus.
There's a
those
mob
parts don't matter.
There's a mob fight, a boss fight, and then a mob boss fight after that, and those parts are not the climax.
Those parts don't matter because the main conflict of the story has been resolved.
But what I was going to say is, I guess it'll depend on your dialogue choices will affect how strong the writing was. But with the selections that we made, at least, and the scene goes on long enough that I felt the climax of the game basically being you have to console somebody about their grief and convince them to move on.
Yeah.
Like not necessarily it sounds a little bit callous. It was given the gravity and time that it needed to be effective, not only just as like believable that it worked, but as the finale of the game, which I appreciated. Then you just have a shoot bang with Raker, but not before Nikki escapes the power of the thrall of the Soul Stone and releases the evil goo out. Yet the goo, who cares about the goo?
Now she has superpowers? ?
And now she has psychic powers and glowing gold hair. When Danny woke up, he realized he had snow white hair and glowing green eyes. And it's like, and if you don't know that Nikki Gold is an obscure early member of the Guardians from comic books from decades ago, then you're probably going to be very confused about why Nikki, who had I'm gonna say a pretty a fine design.
Yeah, she suddenly has fine design.
Suddenly has telekinetically levitating, burning gold hair and like a jumpsuit.
Yeah,
you're like, what? Wait, what happened there?
I'm really glad you told me about that before it happened because
I didn't know it was gonna happen.
I would have honestly just been sitting there, just like in shock, if you hadn't told me that.
It was very odd. And I don't know how, like, I guess she, like, was exposed to this, because she was technically holding the Soul Stone for ages, and it wasn't killing her because it was using her. I guess she has, like, I guess we're supposed to believe she has residual Soul Stone energy.
Maybe.
Or some crap. I really don't know.
Or the goo got thrown in her body, and there's
I suppose their thought process is, like, if we're going to have her be part of the team, which makes sense, because there's no way that Peter wouldn't take her on that ship at the ending of the story.
We need to make her combat effective for a sequel.
We need to make her combat effective for a sequel. I almost would have preferred she was like our Futaba.
Or even like our Star Wars prequels Boba Fett, where he flies the ship around a bit. I said that just to piss you off.
Why would you do this?
Make sure to go watch the Disney Plus show Book of Boba Fett streaming now. Sponsored by Book of Boba Fett. We are. See, I did like a Yoda thing. Yeah, no, I'm with you though. I would have rather her just take one of those.
Rocket always insists like the Milano's my ship, but I don't know that he can pilot it.
Oh god,
you could have made Nikki like the noob. You could have had Star-Lord was training her to be the pilot.
I think that would have been cool if she had just become. I think your idea of like the Futaba and also a pilot would have worked really well.
If all of them always leave the ship, I guess they wouldn't want to leave like the 12-year-old like
by herself on like a hostile planet,
and her only guard is Cammy the llama.
Yeah.
But like I don't know. I guess she would have worked as your Otacon.
That's called they want to have new gameplay styles in the sequel if they get one, and as of now they have an option for Mantis and an option for Adam Warlock and an option for Nikki.
Yeah.
They're not hedging their bets on one character.
Yeah, they're leaving in case the writers change their minds about what they want to do. They got plenty of opportunities. And yeah, of course.
It's called if they want to cut someone or add a bunch of people or only add one person because they don't have the scope, they have a bunch of options now.
Yeah, but anyway, the only real I wouldn't even describe it as a problem because until the very ending it's working just fine. Basically, in order to explain how the Church of Universal Truth, which was like a weird small cult, got this big, and how Adam Warlock is tied up in it, and why the Soul Stone is involved, and why the promise is able to happen
We're
at this
not
massive
going
scale.
into that right now.
No. Just very quickly, it is established that there is evil black goo, which was involved in doing all this stuff. At this point, either hopefully you're going to play or watch the game. I would recommend playing it because it's good. And honestly, if you like story-driven single-player games, you should buy this and financially support it. Yeah. I don't know how well it's doing, but this is probably, other than Psychonauts 2, I mean, it's bigger than Psychonauts 2. This should be the biggest single-player. This is the type of game.
It's on PS5, and I imagine it sold decently well, just because parents go to store
and
to
see
buy
Guardian
game,
of Galaxy,
and see Guardian of Galaxy,
Marvel Guardian of Galaxy,
and see new PlayStation 5 game Guardian of Galaxy for a new console that I just bought Timmy, and no other game for console. Because there's no other game for console.
Because there are no other game for console. Is this Final Fantasy 16?
No.
No, it doesn't seem like it. I'll continue to be disappointed.
That's going to have
and
some
mad.
sick box art, though.
Probably.
Yeah.
No,
I'm guessing it's just going to be the render they already
I don't think
have.
it's gonna. I don't think that's the case at all.
I like that render.
That's not going to be the box art. But I don't know. I guess maybe I'll be wrong. Who knows? Anyway, but it doesn't matter at this point. You've already played the game, or you're going to play the game.
Yeah.
So it really doesn't matter. This is a mystery for you to discover. Evil black goo is responsible for a lot of the magic of how the plot is advancing.
Yeah.
With this in mind, Adam Warlock is just like, haha, I beat the evil black goo, because beating Soulstone evil black goo is kind of a problem too big for this story to tackle.
Correct.
Because it's kind of a big abstract problem, but it needs to be tackled somehow. So literally they do a fake out with the credits start, and then Adam Warlock
during
gets
the
taken
credits,
over.
it's like things are changing into Magus, so it's like they're not even trying to hide it. It's like it's so obvious.
Anyone who's paying attention to the story knows the story can't be over because this issue has not been resolved.
It's like the freaking the ending reminds me of Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance for like the Festival of Fools. And it's like where Quasimodo's just like sitting there waving
to no one,
and it's like when they're walking back to the ship and it's playing the heroic music and it's like and the five people there. And they're clapping.
They're waving to no one. And you're like, the game's not over. There's no festival.
Like, this is the dumbest crap ever. This can't be the end.
There's no
going
festival,
to be something else.
And I am not a fool.
Yeah.
No, and then not only is it like, well, crap, this plot point was kind of really critical. Because, like, to be completely fair, in terms of how the story is structured, that kind of needs to be there for the story to happen the way that it does. But it's
absolutely.
like, we can't resolve that aspect of it with just like, oh, we shot Raker and it's over now.
Yeah.
So we need to have a big dumb boss fight where we get transported to the galaxy dimension to guard the galaxy against a big, a very large man.
But even they understand that you can't actually fight giant goo man.
So you just fight a bunch of mobs. That like, hey, listen, game development is hard and it takes a lot of time, and that felt like and the ending of the game often gets the least attention because, hey, a lot of players aren't even going to get that far, so we got to make the front bits the best stuff. We got to make it really good. And with that in mind,
unless you're Uncharted 4, then the game just gets better and better and better.
Fair. You say that. The very, very, very middle set piece is the best set piece.
Well, that's what
I'm
saying, but then the back half is probably better than the front half in terms of gameplay.
Sure, that's fine. That's fine. Whatever. Anyway.
Yes, In Plain Sight is the best shooter level of all time.
Anyway, whatchamacallit? Words, come on, failing me. Most of the ending of this game's pretty, like, you got the Fing Fang Foom fight right at the very end. That whole chapter's good. The actual attack on the mothership, you can tell, like, some of the level design gets a little copy-pasty because you're just walking along the exterior of the ship, but it's like, this is still fine. It's moving forward. It all looks good. It's okay. So I can kind of forgive that the final boss fight is you're standing on a platform and
fighting a shadow man
in abstract space, fighting goons you've already fighting like low-level mob enemies that you've already fought many times before, while a large goo man stands over you and laughs, and then the like, hey, the soul stone is super powerful and you can't hold it, and black goo and the world is solved by mash triangle a lot. It's a good thing I've played Knack.
Yeah, no, it's very important. We would not have beaten that game if we hadn't played Knack.
The final,
we've never played Knack.
The very final boss fight, it's like, it doesn't ruin the game by any stretch of the imagination, but it absolutely screams of this one issue, like this one plot thread. They could not figure out a graceful way to resolve it, and the game had to ship. And you know what? It's fine, because really I have almost nothing to complain about for the rest of the runtime of the game.
Yeah, the ending is solid for the emotional beats that really matter. It's more just the nitty-gritty of the plot, and how you get there is a bit messy at the end. Mm-hmm. But like, the emotional beats are there, and they're executed near flawlessly, and that's what really matters.
Yeah. No, it's a good game.
And besides that, I'd say the front 80% of the game, besides the part where our game was running at 8 frames a second, was quite good.
Do you remember, I was just thinking about, because I was thinking about wrapping this up now, because we're pretty much at the end.
Yeah.
Like, I was thinking about, on one hand, this means that if this is financially successful, which I want it to be, because I really need Eidos Montreal to be able to keep making good video games.
That would be ridiculous.
They'll make a sequel to this, which means we're at this rate, we're never going to get another Deus Ex game, which is slightly disappointing to me. But that made me think of the president of Square Enix talking big game about metaverse and blockchain. And what Joshua? Do you remember the Deus Ex universe? Do you remember the Deus Ex universe? After Human Revolution sold a lot of units, the head of Square Enix, not like a specific statement from the president, but just like Square Enix released a statement that was like, this is now one of our pillar franchises, and going forward, we will be developing the Deus Ex universe. We hope to move into many other realms with more games, with different games covering different parts of this world, and possibly even movies, TV, all kinds of other stuff. And they made one more game, also an iPad game called Deus Ex. I think it was called The Fall.
It was called The Fall,
yeah. Listen, when they said, as someone who likes Deus Ex, back in the day when they were like Deus Ex Universe, I was like,
that will last a year.
I was like, oh no. No, this isn't like a...
dude, we'll get Keanu...
This isn't that type of franchise.
We'll get Keanu Reeves on this, and he'll say, "Wake the F up, samurai," and then we'll sell a bajillion units.
He'll say,
"You're breathtaking."
He'll say to Adam Jensen, "You're breathtaking," and Adam Jensen will say, "I never asked for this," and then he'll spin his arms around, and swords will come out of them,
and people will go,
"Whoa!" Freaking...
And then we'll break the records in the box office set by Mortal Kombat Annihilation.
Yeah, dude. Hell yeah. But no, it's like Deus Ex is not a franchise that can support that kind of like, this is not going to be one of the pillars of our business.
Jeez,
like, they had one game that sold really well, and they're like, and now this is everything. I say this with reference to the fact that, historically speaking, when these guys say this is going to be a new pillar of our business, you don't have to believe that. Because they fail very often at these endeavors. Anyway, but with that in mind, I hope this game doesn't fail.
I really hope so.
If you have foolishly listened to this entire discussion
without playing the game,
you should still go out and play it, and hopefully financially support it. If not, maybe you and some friends all go in on it. You share a copy. That's fine.
I think
too.
that would be the way to.
I'm probably gonna loan our copy to Joey, to be honest.
Yeah, because like I could see it as that kind of game because it's not really that replayable. I don't think
unless you like miss stuff and you want to go back and 100%. But honestly, this is exactly the type of game I would recommend playing with an item guide. Like get a guide of like where all the collectibles are and where all the costumes are, because the collectibles are like dialogue with your party members.
Yeah, and it's like
use a guide, find everything.
Yeah, and if you find everything, then there's really no reason to go back to it in any quick way, which makes it very easy to lend this game out to friends and just kind of share the love. Yeah, and then that way
play it again 3 years from now.
Yeah, exactly.
When the new one's coming out.
I would say actually that's a really good idea, would be to share it, because honestly, I mean, I'm not saying this game isn't worth $60 because I think it is, but at the same time, I can see why people would be like, well, I'm only going to get 18 to 20 hours out of this, and I don't think it's worth my investment. I can understand, going in, pooling your money with 2 or 3 friends makes it a lot. It makes it a lot easier of a.
But we gotta listen, guys. We gotta kick that instinct of 18 to 20 hours isn't worth $60, because that's how the game industry decides every game needs to be Destiny and the Division. Oh, God. And I promise,
I want to die.
And we promise this game is good. It's worth your time.
It's very.
Good. I say again, don't be responsible and share.
Yeah,
that's fine. But yeah, get it.
Sharing is in fact caring.
Get it. Share with your friends. Replay it 3 years from now before the sequel comes out.
Correct.
And I believe, unless you have any closing thoughts, Joshua,
Breath of the Wild 2 is going to be underwhelming. Don't get your hopes up.
Yeah, and that's it for the night, ladies and gentlemen. Goodbye!